Coming to you from the Hudson Media Group studios. This is Talking Politics, and I am the professor, Fernando Uribe. I want to thank you for joining us here online. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. Folks, recently, Hudson County Prosecutor Esther Suarez came under some fire for her treatment and view of the local media. And it really put some things into my head about, well, what exactly is the state of journalism locally here? And that's what got me thinking here, right now, in Hudson County. Well, folks, again, as you know, in the recent news cycle, Hudson County Prosecutor Esther Suarez got into a little bit of controversy in hot water for her treatment and her viewpoint, really, of local journalists. She pretty much talked about the idea that, residents shouldn't be relying on journalists and more so on her social media feeds. And I think this is a great disservice, folks, because I'll tell you something right now. And I don't want to sort of speak for all the journalists in the area here in Hudson County, but you know what? I'm going to stand up for me and, quite frankly, what I do. And ladies and gentlemen, whether it's Talk on the Hudson or any various local print and online media services, they're all working very hard. Now, if you listen to my weekly podcast, I certainly have my reservations and my doubts about the national media and even some statewide media sources. But here in Hudson County, folks, there's a plethora of journalists working very hard each and every day to bring you as much information and to be transparent and to be honest. Colleagues such as Terrence McDonald at the Jersey Journal, Al Sullivan at the Hudson Reporter, and even John Hines at the Hudson County View, in addition to Michael Shuren at Real Jersey City, all work very hard to give you the best information and to give it to you promptly and accurately. And I take pride in being in that circle of my fellow colleagues. One of the things that doesn't sit well with me is the idea that journalists need to be dismissed. And there's sort of a condescending tone that, for me, doesn't really, and I know many of you listening tonight here on Hudson Media Group will agree with me. Now, honestly, when we think about sort of this condescension and this sort of dismissive attitude that comes from perhaps the prosecutor herself, but even local elected officials, and this is something that really doesn't sit well with me. Because listen, for over 2 years, I've been hosting this podcast online every single week, live at 9 p.m. on Blog Talk Radio, and I've had an abundance of local officials, advocates, and activists being very willing to talk with me. And this is the thing, I don't have a problem in getting guests. And one of the reasons that elected officials and advocates and activists trust me is because I'm fair, is because I'm honest, because I'm objective. So whether it's North Bergen Mayor Nicholas Sacco, Union City Mayor Brian Stack, Hoboken Mayor Ravi Bala, Kearney Mayor Al Santos, Weehawken Mayor Richard Turner, Bayonne Mayor Jimmy Davis, even Guttenberg Mayor Wayne Zitt, they all trust me, which is why they come on the show consistently. So when we hear either local elected officials or even campaign managers for whatever reason trying to be dismissive of local media, well, that's just wrong. Because the reality is that we're working hard to give residents the answers that they deserve, the transparency that they're all looking for. And if they're not getting it from the elected officials, well, they look to us. So as I said before, I'm not going to make excuses for sort of the national media and even some statewide agencies. But here in Hudson County, journalists from all of the aforementioned news services are working very, very hard. And one of the things that really I know bothers us is the idea that sometimes elected officials become very evasive or don't become available to either answer questions or want to talk with us. And that's just simply wrong. Again, when I talk about journalism and what we bring to the table, this is the thing. Honestly, you know what? If you want to be dismissive of us, do that at your own peril. But the fact of the matter is that, and here's a news flash, and this really comes out to, let's say, some local campaign managers who, quite frankly, I don't care for. The reality is, folks, you know what? You need us. We don't need you. So the sooner you learn that lesson, I think the better we'll all be. And I know I speak for a lot of residents that tune into our programming here at the Hudson Media Group and also at the other journalistic sources as well. We work hard for you, ladies and gentlemen. So when we see even some political operatives being dismissive of us, you know what? That's not cool. And hopefully, like I said, I get it. You have a job to do, but so do we. And I get it, you need hours to bill. Well, guess what? We take the hours and we do what's best for the community. And that's something that, local journalists like myself take a lot of pride in. If you don't want to take us seriously, that's on you. But as far as what we're doing, we're trying to service the community, and we do that each and every week. And that's what I'm thinking about right here in Hudson County. On the most recent edition of Talk on the Hudson, I had the pleasure of welcoming the Executive Director of the Hudson County Latino Foundation, Carolina Jaquez. Now, for those of you that are not aware, the Hudson County Latino Foundation is a very reputable and worthwhile nonprofit organization addressing the needs of the Latino community, not just only in Hudson County, but also it's spreading statewide. We had a lot of issues to talk about this week. And first and foremost, we want to talk about the mission statement of the organization and really why it's so important for the organization to be advocates for Hispanics and Latinos in Hudson County. Let's check out what she had to say.
Now, Carolina, for our audience tonight that maybe is tuning in for the first time, or it's been some months. I know you were last on the show in October. Certainly lots going on with the organization, but in general. So tonight for our audience that are listening to you for the very first time and are hearing the relevance and the significance of the Hudson County Latino Foundation, what can you tell our listeners tonight about the outreach and really what the mission statement is for the foundation?
Sure. Our mission is to be the largest provider of services in education, healthcare, and community development in Hudson County. We like to create opportunities for everyone.
Now, one of the things, Carolina, that I would argue that makes the HCLF very unique is, and again, folks, if you haven't checked out the website, check it out. It's very user-friendly. It's very detailed. It's hclatinofoundation.org. And I know that one of the big projects for 2019, Carolina, is the financial literacy courses. And I would argue that these are so imperative because as the demographics change in Hudson County and continue to change, and they remain predominantly, Latino/Hispanic, we know that the community itself continues to grow exponentially. And it continues to grow whether it's in the form of new small businesses, entrepreneurs. Latinos and Hispanics continue to really dominate the landscape here locally. And one of the things that I would argue probably at a very young age is in learning about the importance of financial literacy, financial management, all these things, for some reason, we should learn them at high school, but instead, they're never taught to us. We get to really read about them too often. And at the end, it puts us, Hispanics and Latinos, in a really precarious position. What really motivated that this year in terms of the financial literacy courses?
Well, we already did a pilot program back in October. We are starting our financial literacy program in the second week of May. We will be having 3 sections, 3 basic sections, and then 1 advanced. We believe that educating our people when it comes to the financial will help them grow. We need to create awareness in order to make the change. We want everyone to know what the advantage to knowing a credit report, knowing where you're standing, where you want to get, how you're going to do it, to buying a home, to getting the car that you want, even with student loans. So we want to educate everyone. And I know that Latinos, we have a disadvantage. We come to this country and we concentrate on making the day-to-day, working the jobs sometimes that no one else wants.
Now, without a doubt, the services provided by the Hudson County Latino Foundation are of a necessity and also extremely worthwhile. So it was great for to at least have her explain that to our listening audience on Talking the Hudson. But as we move forward, though, throughout the conversation, we talked about also the importance of financial management and whether it's having a good credit rating and whether it's budgeting and how important that is to Latinos in Hudson County and what they're doing to provide services to encourage that healthy economic behavior.
And you raised some great points right now in the sense of, the importance of financial management and for Hispanics and Latinos specifically, having that good credit rating, being able to work and be able to save. I mean, again, we live in an area that's so expensive. The cost of living continues to rise for a lot of different reasons. We know that housing becomes a challenge. We know that the real estate market becomes a challenge. I mean, I have so many friends that work in real estate, and they tell me all the time that, Hudson County is ripe for just a tsunami of realtors and for, home values skyrocketing. And that really kind of puts Latinos, again, in a really precarious position. I mean, it in many respects, there are a lot of townships and municipalities that are pricing people out. I mean, along all socioeconomic backgrounds, but specifically Latinos. I mean, it seems like lifelong residents in Hudson County are being priced out because of what's going on. Is that something that maybe the financial literacy courses can cover, or is that something that perhaps, needs to be talked about more?
I think we need to inform more of the changes that are happening. For example, Bayonne. I'm a resident of Bayonne, and my understanding is that pretty soon, if it hasn't started, everyone's houses will be valued in order for the taxes to be increased. Not only from the outside, but also from the inside. They're going to look in, check how luxurious the houses are in order to bring the taxes higher than what they are already in Bayonne. This is, the rental is going to increase due to that. So we have to let the public know that changes are going to be happening.
One of the things we covered during our sit-down on Talking the Hudson was the idea that even debate now is extremely difficult to have, whether it's issues about illegal immigration, immigration reform, or just the quality of life for Hispanics and Latinos alike in Hudson County. And she certainly had a lot to say about what she brings to the table and also what the organization is doing for everyone involved.
I think we're losing, not you and I, but I think collectively for a lot of society, I think we're losing the ability to have calm, rational dialogue, when it comes to issues that involve immigration reform, that involve multiculturalism, that involve, let's say, assimilation. It seems like we're sort of living in a time that we have to be so careful when we talk sometimes, because it might just trigger a reaction in people, and something might just explode. And I'll give you an example, and I'll bring up an example I discussed in my class with my students. We were, my intro class, we were talking about multiculturalism and sort of the idea that, yes, the United States is predicated on the premise of it being the melting pot. It was the original melting pot on the planet. Now, clearly that's changed. I think we can say that there are melting pots all over the world, whether it's in Europe and Latin America, wherever. But it seems that when we're talking about issues like multiculturalism or, let's say, assimilation, it seems that, you try to talk about it, you're sort of bombarded with labels. And again, as I mentioned before, you can be accused of being a racist, you can be accused of being bigoted, of being xenophobic. And chances are, again, I'll come up with the example of my parents and individuals in their age demographic that would say, hey, I'm not a racist or a bigot whatsoever. I'm an immigrant like anybody else. But what I'm also concerned about is we want to have this conversation and be open and honest. Like, we want to be a country of laws that follows laws, but we also want to be compassionate. Like, is it possible to do both, Carolina?
I think it is possible, Fernando. It is very possible. If we follow the law and we have compassion, it could be done. I mean, we have to. There has to be a reform created that will legalize. Not everyone, because not everybody will be able to be legal. Not everyone will be able to prove that they're able to stay in this country. And what do I mean by that? For example, if there's a reform that will, on the application, it would say, state, have you ever committed a crime? Have you been arrested before? Have you, there's people in the country that they are not documented, that they have criminal history. So maybe those, they need to go. I mean, do we need someone that has a criminal record in the country? No. And what do I mean by that? Someone that's driving drunk, someone that's hurting others. Not just the fact that you cross the border and that qualifies you to be a criminal. Not that. But your behavior, your actions, and that you should be in jail, yes. So we have to segment everyone. Again, we have to clear, choose who is worth it to be here, who has been paying taxes, even though they don't have a social, who has been behaving. I mean, something has to be created.
Lastly, we covered the impact of marijuana legalization and ultimately what it's going to do for the Latino community in Hudson County and overall sort of like for the political and social climate that this highly controversial topic seems to encompass. Let's hear what you had to say about this.
There's discussions about legalizing marijuana and taxing it and generating revenue and creating businesses, dispensaries, or anything else. Those are great entrepreneurial opportunities, specifically for Latinos here in Hudson County because of the population. But is that a good thing? Do we want to sort of glorify? We know it's inevitable. We know that we need to reform criminal justice policy. But at the end of the day, is it something we want to glorify?
No. I know that in the dispensary, maybe an ounce of marijuana will be sold for $42 eventually. It will create a $42 tax code for the state eventually if the law passes. But I think that it might lead to other drugs. So what I've seen with the New Jersey reentry program, these could be the gateway opening for our youth or for whoever is going to be using to want something else, to want something stronger, and it will create addiction. Do we want that? No. We already have enough people dying. We don't need any more. We don't need more addiction in the state.
Well, certainly, Carolina Jaquez's appearance sheds a lot of light on not just only hard good work in the community, but also the excellent work that the Hudson County Latino Foundation does on a daily basis. You can check them out at www.hclatinofoundation.org. And more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, coming up on Wednesday night, April the 17th, at the Left Bank Burger Bar in downtown Jersey City at 194 Newark Avenue, coming up will be the Hudson County Latino Foundation's Spring Mixer. It'll be a wonderful evening with an open bar and hors d'oeuvres, and the keynote speaker for the evening will be Attorney General Grubir Grewal. He'll have a lot to say about criminal justice reform and also the good work that the foundation does. So if you're in the area next Wednesday night, Wednesday, April 17th, starting at 6 p.m. at the Left Bank Burger Bar in downtown Jersey City, come check it out. It'll be a wonderful event. There'll be awesome networking opportunities, and quite frankly, your chance to contribute to a very worthwhile organization. Well, folks, here, now to some local stories I wanted to cover with you this week. First and foremost, one that really came to my mind here, and one from the Hudson Reporter, my good friend and colleague, Al Sullivan, who I like to call sort of the dean of Hudson County journalism himself, wrote a very interesting article concerning the state senator out of the 31st Legislative District. Now, again, if you're not familiar with that part of the area in Hudson County that encompasses Bayonne and all of the south side of Jersey City, and the office is currently occupied by the Honorable Senator Cunningham, who coincidentally I'll be having on my show coming up in May on Blog Talk Radio. And she's been a previous guest before, and we've talked about this specific issue, but in this week's edition of the Hudson Reporter, Al Sullivan talked about her movement to allow inmates to be able to vote. And that's sort of a fundamental question that I think is on the mind of not just only legislators like Senator Cunningham, but other legislators throughout the state of New Jersey. Now, one of the things, in an article I think that you'll be able to at least hopefully find very interesting is that the state senator herself was sort of seeking support from the Jersey City Municipal Council at a recent city council meeting as she, along with State Senator Ronald Rice out of Essex County, are sponsoring a bill that would allow New Jersey inmates, parolees, and even those on probation, which could total up to 94,000 individuals in the state of New Jersey, to ultimately vote. Now, state election laws do prohibit inmates, as well as those on probation and parole, from voting. Now, the senator has shared this opinion with me, not just only on my podcast, but also publicly with other news outlets, and that she believes that these individuals are being disenfranchised. Now, the bill that she's sponsoring would ultimately allow them to register to vote as part of an effort to rehabilitate them and ultimately return them to society. Now, again, folks, if you're not familiar, now while most European countries allow inmates to vote, in the United States, only Maine and Vermont do. Voting rules are certainly regulated by each state, but not by the federal government. And certainly in states that ban prisoner voting, the rules tend to vary. So, for example, some states, including New Jersey, tend to have more lenient laws when it comes to restoring voting rights, but that doesn't seem to be the case. What Senator Cunningham is looking to do is at least that with voting privileges, having them automatically restored if an inmate completes a sentence, or at least later a parole, or even completes his or her probationary sentence. And folks, this is one of the things that I think comes under a lot of controversy. And when I talked to the state senator recently, again, she shared her views that ultimately it disenfranchises offenders. So it sort of puts me at a quandary as I was sort of looking at this article, and it refreshes my memory about my conversations with her. Now, ultimately, listen, I don't want to disenfranchise anybody, but the idea that perhaps this, not allowing inmates to vote is somewhat racist, I'm not ready to go there. But what I will say, though, is if we're trying to rehabilitate men and women, and even adolescents in New Jersey, and get them to sort of be productive members of society, yes, I think restoring the right to vote is important. Having them be involved and engaged in our government, to be engaged in our elections. Now, I think one of the things that I'll be very honest about is I pretty much want to sort of draw the line with very serious offenders. Now, listen, if you're arrested for a low-level drug offense or any other sort of misdemeanor, listen, I'm down with allowing you to get the right to vote restored. But if we're talking about very serious and heinous type of offenders, whether it be offenses which include sexual assault, the abuse of children, or anything else that's much more serious, I'm not really in favor of it. And I know I've covered that with the state senator. And even though while we respectfully disagreed, I think what we're at least able to do, and at least what she's trying to do, at least from what I can tell in the article, is the idea of trying to bring some sort of balance. Now, what the state senator did recently in addressing the city council in Jersey City was sort of citing an 1844 New Jersey law that restricts voting only to white men. Now, of course, that law was passed at the same time that the state had indeed outlawed slavery, but also restricted inmates from voting. Now, folks, it's certainly a long time away from 1844. And I understand the senator's plight in trying to allow inmates or even those that have been released from prison, and even, again, probationers, parolees alike, in getting them at least access to a ballot. And I understand all that, and I respect the senator in terms of what she's trying to do here. But listen, there has to be a line. There has to be some sort of line in the sand, I think, that we have to draw. Now, whether or not both her and State Senator Ronald Rice out of Essex County will get the necessary votes once it comes to the floor on the state Senate in Trenton, it remains to be seen. But without a doubt, I applaud her nobility in this endeavor. But as I said, if we're going to allow very violent and serious offenders to vote, I think I speak on behalf of a lot of Hudson County residents. That's something that they're not going to be too much in favor of. But again, we'll see. I know it doesn't come to a vote on the state Senate floor in Trenton for some weeks, but we'll keep you posted here on Talking Politics as to how this bill progresses. But without a doubt, I'm looking forward to having the state senator on Talking to Hudson in the coming weeks to sort of discuss this issue and whether or not she's been able to sway some of her more moderate Democrats that occupy the legislature, both in the state Senate and also in the state assembly. So keep tuned for that, and we'll have plenty to say in the weeks and months ahead. Folks, another local issue I wanted to cover with you today. As we all know, the May 14th municipal elections are coming up in both North Bergen and West New York, and it seems that as it's getting very heated and very antagonistic in my hometown, as a matter of fact. When I look at the races right now, the mayor and incumbent, Felix Roque, certainly faces considerable challenges from the New Beginnings ticket, and certainly the idea that the Hudson County Democratic Organization is also backing the New Beginnings ticket against the incumbent. Now, let's be very fair about something, because, something that most people don't know is, first and foremost, I have a lot of respect for Felix Roque. 8 years ago, when I ran for the state assembly in the 33rd legislative district, one of the things that really stood out for me is that Dr. Roque came to my fundraiser. Now, he wasn't there at the very onset, but he came at the end of the evening, and I respect him for that. And yes, I was running as a Republican in Hudson County. I know that's sort of political suicide, but I ran a very honest and very moderate campaign, and even Dr. Roque recognized that. Even though he's a registered Democrat, he came to my event anyway and showed his support, not only because I'm the son of a Cuban mother, but he felt that my campaign was very worthwhile. So 8 years later, certainly that still stays fresh in my mind concerning Felix Roque. So this is one of the things that makes this race sort of conflictive for me, because I understand sort of the opposition in terms of having maybe a new direction for West New York, but I understand that Dr. Roque, in terms of keeping property taxes down, keeping crime down, keeping the streets clean in West New York, is something that he certainly wants to campaign on. Now, whichever side of the fence you sit on electorally, that's your business, and I'm not here to tell you how to vote. But one of the things I think that makes it very frustrating about this entire campaign is how nasty it's gotten and how volatile it's going to be leading up to May 14th. And folks, it's only a few weeks away, so if you haven't registered to vote, I certainly urge you to do that and participate in the process. But one of the things that really stood out this week, and sort of a good article referenced on the Hudson County View by my colleague John Hines, talking about the idea that the mayor is an advocate for no evening parking fees for residents, but even though the opposition is starting to question the timing of why the mayor is taking this position. And again, folks, right from the very onset, I said it before, and I'll say it again. I've talked about it on the podcast, and I'll talk about it on this show. It's a very interesting race in West New York. We look at exactly, who's right and who's wrong. And again, it's sort of difficult to sort of ascertain exactly who's telling the truth and who isn't. But one of the things I think that's frustrating about this race exactly is the idea that, for example, New Beginnings has been very receptive to my show. They've been very receptive to my podcast. On the flip side, the mayor has not been receptive. But let me be very clear, though. I don't want to sort of put the onus on the mayor because the mayor can only do so much. I'll put the onus more on whoever's working on his campaign and how evasive they're being and how dismissive they're being of not just myself, but other media outlets. And that's just wrong. Because again, as the incumbent, and especially as one that is campaigning against the machine and against the county party, which coincidentally didn't back him 8 years ago, and he pulled off one of the most probably noteworthy political upsets in Hudson County's history. He's trying to do it again 8 years later. We don't know if he will, but certainly I know he'll go down swinging, and we'll find out what the results will be on May 14th. But in the meantime, I'm hopeful that the mayor will be receptive to talking to me and other media outlets, because if he doesn't, it might spell doom for him on Election Day. Mayor, if you're listening to this and you're watching it, I hope you listen to your heart, and maybe you shouldn't listen to some of your campaign operatives, because quite frankly, I don't think they have your best interest in mind. Well, folks, again, some good stories here that we'll continue to cover in the weeks and months ahead here on Talking Politics. Now, again, if you missed any part of tonight's, portion and broadcast, you can always check out the excellent programming that's provided on a daily basis by the Hudson Media Group by going to www.hmgtvshows.com. You can also check it out on www.livestream.com/HMGTV. Don't forget to follow the Hudson Media Group on Facebook and also follow them on Instagram and Twitter. Brand new followers, brand new likes. You'll definitely enjoy their content. As for my local podcast, folks, again, every Wednesday night live at 9 p.m., you can listen to the best analysis and commentary about the political climate in Hudson County by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/TalkinTheHudson. Don't forget to follow the show on Instagram at TalkinTheHudson. You can check me out on Instagram as well at Professor Fernando Uribe. Also, hit me up on Twitter at Professor F. Uribe. And for all of you Facebook subscribers, check out Talking the Hudson by clicking the like button, share it on your walls, and tell your friends to do the same. So 1,300 plus likes and counting, folks. Wonderful content each and every day on all the social media apparatuses for not only Talking the Hudson, but also for the Hudson Media Group. So I do want to thank you for joining us here online. Once again, folks, check out all the excellent programming from the Hudson Media Group by going to www.hmgtvshows.com and also www.livestream.com/HMGTV. I'm the Professor, Fernando Uribe. Don't forget to join us online every week as we'll continue talking politics right here in Hudson County. I'm the Professor, Fernando Uribe, once again. We'll see you next time.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/TalkOnTheHudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.